This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
On Friday we spoke out from the Ben Ish Chai the machshava behind the shear in the size of a shofar. The Gemara says in Rosh Daf Chav Zayin, "V'kama shear tkiyah," how big does the shofar need to be? Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says, "Kadei sheyechzena biyadai v'yira lekan v'lekan." So you could hold it in your hand and see sticking out on one side and the other side. In other words, the shofar needs to be big enough to hold it, and with some part of the shofar coming out on both sides. And the Ben Ish Chai explains it lefi machshava, based on the fact that when one does tshuva, one has to grab onto the tshuva process and see two elements, work on bein adam lamakom and bein adam lachaveroi. Another idea the Ben Ish Chai mentioned is that you need to grab onto the tshuva process, think about where you came from, mitipas rucha, and where you're going. One is going to a makom rima b'seileya. And then finally the Ben Ish Chai said that there's a concept that the highest madrega we aspire for is not just olam haba, but olam chatira b'chayecha, v'zoicha, to a feeling of devekos in this world while we're doing mitzvahs. But now we're going to speak about the Lomdus of the shear of the shofar, because the Gemara says the shofar has to be big enough to grab it, and it should be sticking out on both sides, which would seem to indicate that one is required to hold on to the shofar at the time of the tkiyah, because if one did not have to hold on to the shofar, why would the shofar need to be that size? And the question that the Mikroi Kodesh, Tzvi Pesach Frank, quotes from Rav Diskin, Rav Yeruchem, Rav Shiur Yeruchem Diskin, is that Rav Diskin asks that the Rambam writes, what would the halacha be if one were to steal a shofar and blow the shofar on Rosh Hashanah? After all, we know if somebody steals a lulav and shakes the lulav, lo yatsa, because it's a mitzvah haba ba'avera. If somebody were to steal matzah and to eat the matzah on Pesach, lo yatsa, it's a mitzvah haba ba'avera. What's the halacha if somebody steals a shofar and blows the shofar? The halacha is you are yotzei, because the Rambam says that the shofar is not the chefta shel mitzvah. The shofar is merely the tool which is used to produce the sound. The sound is the item of the mitzvah. The same way if someone were to steal a hammer and build a sukkah, one would be yotzei the mitzvah of sukkah. Likewise, if someone were to steal the shofar and blow the shofar is not the chefta shel mitzvah, and therefore one would be yotzei the mitzvah of tikiyah shofar with a stolen shofar. The Rambam goes so far as to say that one does not even have to lift up the shofar or hold the shofar when one blows it. And that indicates that the shofar is not the chefta shel mitzvah, but it's the koil. So asks Rav Diskin, quoted by the Mikroi Kodesh, if that's the case, if one does not have to hold the shofar, why then does the halacha require that the shofar be the size that you could grab it and it sticks out on both sides? You don't even have to hold the shofar in the first place. So Rav Diskin answers, using the halachic principle of kol haroi labila in bila ma'akeves v'chol she'eino roi labila bila ma'akeves, meaning whenever you need something, you don't have to actually do it, but you have to be able to do it. So you don't have to actually hold the shofar, but you need to be able to hold the shofar. So if the shofar is large enough that you could grab it and it's sticking out on both sides, then it is worthy to potentially be able to hold it. But you don't have to actually hold it, you just have to be able to hold it. But if you're not able to hold it, lo yatsa. But if you are able to hold it and you don't hold it, lo yatsa. However, the Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank has a different take on this. Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank holds not only do you not have to hold the shofar, you don't even have to be able to hold the shofar. The din that a shofar has to be big enough that you could grab it and it's sticking out on both sides is only that's a shear. It's halacha l'Moshe Sinai. HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe on Har Sinai that the shofar has to be that big, not because you need to be able to hold it. That's just the shear. K'chol shiurei ha-Torah. All shiurim in the Torah, halacha l'Moshe Sinai. There's not a reason for that shear. Says Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank, I'll bring you a raya that you don't have to be able, that the reason for the shear is not that you need to be able to hold it. Because halacha is, what if you have a shofar of Isurei Hana, a shofar of not Isurei Hana, a shofar that is of Avodah Zarah and has to be burned. So the Gemara says that the shofar is possible because Kesusei Mechta Shiurei, the shear is considered diminished, because since you have to burn it, it's like you already burnt it, and it's like the shofar is missing the requisite shear. Correct, Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank, if the only reason why we need that size of a shofar is to be able to hold it, so I'm able to hold it. Very nice, I have to burn it, and once I burn it, it won't have the shiur. But right now, if the only reason why I need that shiur is to be able to hold it, I'm able to hold it. If the size of the requirement is a practical requirement, I meet the practical requirement. It must be, it's a halacha l'maisha b'sinai. You just need it to be that size. And right now in Lomdus, it's not that size. So there's actually a Machlokes between Rav Diskin and Tzvi Pesach Frank as to what the reason for the shiur is. Rav Diskin holds the reason for the shiur is you need to be able to. Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank says no, it's just halacha l'maisha b'sinai. There would be a very big nafkamina l'halacha, points out Rav Yosef Kohen, son-in-law of Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank, in the footnotes on the Makarei Kodesh, the nafkamina would be a shofar that has the requisite size, but you can't hold it. For whatever reason, there's a interference, there's a chatzitza on the shofar where technically, where you're not physically able to hold the shofar. So according to Rav Diskin, the shofar would be possible because you don't have to actually hold it, but you have to be able to, and you're not able to. But according to Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank, the shofar has the requisite size, although you're not capable of holding it. So this is a very interesting machlokes in the Lomdus of the reason for the shiur, that a shofar has to be big enough to be able to hold it with something sticking out on both sides. So we have the Lomdus of the shiur and the machshava of the shiur. The Rebbe Shalom should grant us siyata d'shmaya to understand all dimensions of all the mitzvahs haTorah.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.